This is the third and final video of me installing minor deck fixtures on HMS Hood. Today I will be completing the fixtures that go on the shelter deck. That is, I will install these 4 ladders, plus the 5th ladder that goes where this structure was opened up. If you recall back to one of the very early videos, the structure was removed since it was molded in error. It should actually be an opening for another stairway. In addition to these 5 stairways, I will also be installing the 2 stairways that run from the front of the shelter deck to the forecastle deck. There are 2 minor plastic components that need to be modified and installed. This straight section of these tubes should be cut off, and only this angled section should be installed onto the shelter deck. To finish off the video, I'll install the hand railing that encloses the shelter deck. As usual, I'm going to start by preparing the plastic components. I'm leaving the part attached to the sprues simply to hold it to make it easier for me to remove this base. Since this is a very small component, if I were to cut it off the sprue before trying to remove the base, it would just be difficult to hold. This is going to make things a little bit easier for me. To remove the base itself, I'm going to use a saw. I think a saw is going to give me the best chance of getting a straight, clean cut. If I were to use a blade or a file, I think there's a greater chance that I'd get a skew base. After sawing the cylindrical section of the component, I remove them from their sprue and then clean up the parts with a file. Despite my best efforts to not damage the plastic on these components, when I was clipping off that excess plastic, I did manage to gouge out a bit of the plastic of the component. That has left an ugly divot which I'm going to have to fill with putty. I try to avoid this, but sometimes I get it wrong. This time I'm a lot more careful and I leave a larger margin, and when I clip off that excess plastic, I don't take a gouge out of the component. This just means that there's more plastic to clean up with the bar file, but that's not much of an issue. The second issue with these components is that they should have a flat top. They should not be opened up like this, so I need to fill them with something. To fill components like this, I like to use thick super glue. After preparing the plastic components, I then moved on to prepare the ladders. There are in total 7 ladders that I need to make in this video. The FlyHawk Super Detail Upgrade Kit provided 4 ladders that lead down from the shelter deck to underneath the shelter deck. The 5th ladder comes from the RN Roma kit that I had. I chose this ladder because the top of it, the hand railing part, matches the hand railing of the ladders that were provided with the FlyHawk kit. Since only the top of the ladder will be visible, that's all that really matters. The 2 ladders that run from the front of the shelter deck to the forecastle deck are also a little bit different. They're slightly shorter and they lead onto a platform, so I will also prepare those 2 platforms. The process for preparing all of these ladders is exactly the same. I use the photo etch folding tool to clamp them in place. I find that bending ladders with tweezers can be a bit of a risky thing. That's because it's quite easy to get the posts out of alignment and then you have to fight to get them back into alignment. I prefer to avoid that by using the photo etch folding tool. In any case, I first fold up the handrails and then use a knife to push out the steps. By using this method, I get a good result every time. Folding up the hand railing on the platforms is a little bit simpler. There isn't much to get out of alignment here, so I'm able to clamp them with tweezers and then just push up the hand railing into position. Once I have the hand railing correctly positioned, I fix it in place using extra thin super glue that I apply with a wire. Now that all the components have been prepared, painting can begin. The first thing that I'm going to paint are the hand railings that will enclose the shelter deck. I'm going to use this hard, so to speak, type of hand railing to enclose the shelter deck. That's the one with the straight rungs. There are 7 sections of the soft type of hand railing. That's the one with the slight curve in the rungs. That's because it's a cable, not a bar. I need those to enclose the shelter deck and quarter deck. So I'm forced to use this hard type of hand railing. By my calculations, I'm going to need precisely 2 sections of this hand railing, and that's what is provided. After painting the hand railings, I then paint the ladders, their platforms, and these plastic components. Everything is painted in XF53, that is the color that I'm using to represent HMS Hood's superstructure. Once the paint has dried, installation can begin, starting with the plastic components. First, I place a small drop of thick plastic cement onto the deck, and then I place the component onto the glue. While the glue is setting, I carefully position the component to ensure that it is sitting straight and level. Once I'm happy with how the part is sitting on the port side of the ship, I repeat the process on the starboard side of the ship. Next, I'll install all the ladders that run from the shelter deck to underneath the shelter deck. All of these ladders are installed using the exact same method. First, I apply a small drop of thick super glue to the side of the opening at the top of the stairway, and then I carefully lower the ladder into position and let it fall against that thick super glue. The thick super glue does give me some time to adjust the orientation of the component before it sets, so I use that time to make sure that it is sitting nice and straight. Once all of the ladders are correctly positioned, I then reinforce the bond using extra thin super glue that I apply with a wire. And now for the main event of this video, the installation of the hand railing to enclose the shelter deck. For the most part, I try to have the stanchions, the posts, for the hand railing to be located on corners, but that is not always possible, but I can at least start by trying to have that the case. And I also want to have a stanchion at the edge where it opens up for this gap for the ladder. That means that the first section of hand railing that I need to install runs from the superstructure to the opening for the ladder that runs from the front of the shelter deck to the forecastle deck. I can then have two sections of hand railing that run from the corner to the ladder. I start by making the initial bend on that stanchion and then cut the segment that runs up next to the superstructure to length. Once I'm happy with the angle on the bend and the length of hand railing, I apply thick super glue to the base of one segment of the hand railing and then put it in contact with the edge of the superstructure. The remainder of the hand railing is then glued down by applying thin super glue to the edge of the hand railing across its entire length. The process is then repeated on the starboard side of the ship. I now know where to install the platform for the top of the ladder, so I apply a small strip of thick super glue to the top of the superstructure and then position the platform in place on top of the glue. After ensuring that the platform is sitting straight and level, the bond is reinforced with extra thin super glue. The process is then repeated on the port side of the ship. Next, I need to prepare and install a section of hand railing that runs from the platform to this forward UP position. I think it's the UP position. In this case, I'm not going to be able to put a stanchion on the bend. That means I'm going to have to do it somewhere on the rungs, and I don't have anything to indicate where that should be. So I'm going to have to figure that out quite carefully. To do that, I apply tape to the side of the structure in line with the platform, and then place the hand railing in contact with that tape to mark the edge where it should be bent. Once the hand railing is stuck to the tape, I carefully remove it from the model and make the bend at the edge of the tape. Now that I have the bend in the correct position, it's just a matter of trimming the railing to fit the gap between the UP position and the corner. The hand railing is then glued down using the same process as before. I apply thick super glue to a section of the hand railing, put it in contact with the superstructure, and then reinforce the full length of the hand railing using extra thin super glue. Once again, I repeat the process on the starboard side of the ship. Now that the platforms for the ladders are in position, I can install the ladders. To install these ladders, I follow a slightly different process than the process that I use to install the ladders that lead to underneath the shelter deck. In this case, positioning has to be a little bit more precise. So I position the ladder dry without any glue applied to it. And then I start by applying thin super glue with a wire to the base of the ladder. This will hold the ladder in place so that I can then apply thin super glue to the top of the ladder to bond it to the platform. The process is then repeated on the other side of the ship. The rest of the hand railings don't have any openings in them, which makes them a little bit easier to install. It's just a matter of counting out the correct number of sections to fill a gap and then bending it. Since this hand railing has many slight bends in it, there are no real 90-degree corners or anything like that, I don't need to use the photo etch folding tool to fold it. So long as I have tweezers with a sharp edge like these ones, I'll be able to fold them simply with tweezers. This will make the process go just a little bit more quickly, and it'll look just as good as if it was folded with the photo etch folding tool. The process that I'm using here is to hold the hand railing in position and then clamp it with these straight edge tweezers on the corner. I then simply fold the hand railing where I've clamped it in the tweezers. After making all the bends to have the hand railing follow the edge, then simply cut the last section to match the length of the opening. Once again, to glue the hand railing down, I apply thick super glue to one segment of the hand railing, put it in contact with the edge of the superstructure, and then glue down the full length of the hand railing using extra thin super glue. And then, as always, the process is repeated for the other side of the ship. For this section of hand railing, I'm going to do something a little bit different. From what I've seen, the hand railing doesn't follow the edge of the superstructure over here. This corner gets cut off. I don't have a problem with that. It's just one less bend that I need to make, so why not? Other than that, the process is exactly the same. Position the hand railing on the model to find where the corners should be, clamp on the corners with tweezers, impart the bend on the hand railing. Once all the bends are in place, cut the railing to length, then apply thick super glue to one segment of the ladder, place it in contact with the model, then apply thin super glue across the entire length of the hand railing to properly bond it down. Then repeat the process on the other side of the ship. For this next section of hand railing, I'm back to following the edge of the superstructure. This is the easiest section of hand railing to install up to this point in this video. There's only one bend in it, and there's no gap in this hand railing. So simply impart the bend and follow the same process as before. Now for the easiest 4 sections of hand railing, these ones are easy because there's no bend. It's just a matter of cutting them to length and gluing them down. All of these handrails are installed using the same process. Apply thick super glue to a segment of the hand railing, place it in contact with the model, reinforce the bond with thin super glue, and repeat. After doing that 4 times, all the hand railing is installed to enclose the shelter deck. The FlyHawk Super Detail Upgrade Kit has pretty bad instructions. One of the issues is that it doesn't indicate where the different types of hand railings should be installed. Because of this, I've been quite sparing with how I've been using the hand railing in the kit, just so that I don't run out. However, at this stage of the build, I now have enough information as to where all these different types of hand railings should go. As you already saw, the long 3-rung hard handrails goes around the shelter deck, and the soft rails go around the forecastle deck and the quarter deck. That leaves these 2-rung handrails with narrow segments, and I think these are just perfect to enclose the top of the ladderways. Since these ladderways come up through an opening in the deck, you don't want people to accidentally walk through from the back and fall through the hole, so there needs to be a handrail to close off that area. This segment is just about perfect for the width of that opening. Due to the way that I constructed this model, there are 2 different sizes of openings. They all have a width of 1 segment, but some of them are 1 segment long and others are 2 segments long. So I cut a number of 3 and 5 segment sections of hand railing. Since I want a nice crisp corner on each of these sections of hand railing, I fold them using the photo etch folding tool. Once folded, they're all painted in XF53 and then installed on the model. To install them, first I apply a small drop of extra thick super glue to the back edge of the openings for the stairways, and then I place the railing on top of the glue. Once the hand railing is correctly positioned and I'm sure that it is sitting flat on the deck, I reinforce the bond using extra thin super glue. The same process is used to install all of these sections of hand railing. You will recognize this as basically the same process that I use to install all hand railing. Just a note that I often put out when I'm working with super glue. Super glue, especially this thin super glue, has a tendency to make the paintwork around it appear very glossy, but although it has quite a high visual impact at this point, it is very flat. So after I spray the whole model in a gloss coat before weathering, and then after weathering with a matte coat, that glossy effect of the super glue will completely disappear. So it's not something that is concerning me at this point. If I find that after applying that gloss coat, the first gloss coat before weathering, that there is a visual bump, then I'll just do some gentle sanding to remove it and touch up that area. At this point, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be doing in the next video. I'm torn between working on the boats and installing the cradles on the shelter deck, and installing the nests for the aft figures machine guns. I guess you'll have to wait until next week to find out what I decided to do. If you would like to support this channel or see how the ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.